I'm davetrippin, and this is the Interstice podcast. So let's get going. First of all, thanks very much to everyone wherever you're tuning in from, whether that's on Spotify, Apple iTunes, or on the channel itself. I really appreciate that. And I want to start by saying a big shout out, a big thank you to Joseph. I run a Discord for my Patreon. Please do consider supporting me there. And Joseph, this kind soul, had offered to organize and basically want to be one of the admins there. And for the last 4 videos, he'd asked me, he said, would you shout me out? I was like, why? Or more, I thought that he wanted some particular shout out for a platform. I thought, like, what do you have, Joseph, that's like a platform you want to be shouted out on? And he's like, no, I don't have any platforms. I just want to be shouted out. I thought that was hilarious. I was like, started to sound kind of scary. I was like, you're not going to, should I say it 3 times? You know, this is like a Candyman scenario here. But no, it's totally innocent. I really appreciate you, Joseph. Thanks for doing all that work there. And I told you I wouldn't forget. I made notes of just being busy that I hadn't before. So with that out of the way and my conscience finally at rest, we can move along. So I wanted to talk about supercharging your attitude, things that you can do for that, and what I notice is most effective for me personally. And I'm taking this right away from my experience today when I went for a run. I've been talking a lot recently about going for high intensity interval training around my place because the gym shut down. And I mean, I've noticed this time and time again, so it's a lot easier for me to go out and be physically active. But today was like, I can't even believe it. I cannot describe to you how amazing the shift was. So perhaps it is that I feel these shifts more than the average bear. But I was getting to a point today, I could actually feel it. This is another thing. I could feel how I was heading towards like a depressive state. And I just knew at that point, I was like, get out the door, do the interval, do it at a high intensity like you've been training to do, and perhaps you'll have a result. It was instantaneous. Like I felt probably by the end of the first 5-minute high intensity period that I did, a marked improvement in my mood. And then when I got back this evening, as soon as I got back inside, I felt like, oh, I'm going to make sure that I eat healthy tonight. I'm trying to do that. And you easily fall off the wagon. But I got back in, more than happy to go out, bought some healthy groceries, made myself like a good healthy dinner. After that, had like all the energy to go around my house and clean. And that puts you in a better mind state. You got to clean your damn room, as Jordan Peterson would say. And that's what I did. And then I thought, well, I want to stay ahead. And at my work, I think I've talked about this, that they actually appreciate the work that you do there, which is really cool. And so it's one thing in the first place that I have enough energy to do what it is that I wanted to do today. But I've really noted what a different feeling it is when you feel like putting in additional effort is actually appreciated by the people that you're employed by. Something for me to bear in mind should I ever one day employ people. And more to the point of like the energy that I had to do this. I got right to work, and as of speaking to you now, I planned out this killer lesson, got this great PowerPoint. And it's especially satisfying because we're sort of on a rotation of contributions. So I'll plan something, and then another member of that grade group will plan something. And so you don't want to be the guy putting out really crappy content, right? You want to be the guy that when people get your stuff, they say, wow, this makes my life so easy. And then to this, even this podcast now, the amount of energy that I had coming into it. And so I just, there is a word that I keep forgetting, but I implore is not it. Beseech maybe is another that I could use. But for anybody who is out there who's listening to this, I don't think it takes much, but I think it takes getting your heart rate above a certain rate. I would say now that I notice more and more, like obviously you're going to see like greater benefits given a particular period of time that it is that you're going to do something. But if you get that heart rate up between 5-10 minutes. The max that I'm doing is 3 5-minute intervals that are at high intensity, and you will feel like $1,000,000. I promise you this. I say it with like absolute confidence that if you're feeling a dip, more than anything else that you could do aside from sleep is go for these high intensity intervals, and they just clear you out mentally. You're sharp afterwards. It feels great, and I want to pass that along to people because it's too easy to get stuck down there, and I've talked about this a lot before, and then it so shapes your thinking that while you're having like completely irrational thoughts that are totally the result of your mental state, because you're in that mental state, you think you're still constructing ideas rationally, and you're really not. You got to get out of it. You got to hit the release valve, the escape valve. And I really think if you want to supercharge your attitude and your approach for whatever it is that you have to do, this intensity of training is just a great thing. And kind of the beauty of it, why I want to wax poetic about why I like it so much, is that it's multifold, it's manifold in its reasons why it's so effective and useful. First of all, it's the amount of time, where a lot of people say, oh, I don't know if I have the time to work out. Well, it's 30 minutes. That's all I had to do this for, was 30 minutes. Also, a lot of people would say, well, I don't know if I can maintain that level of intensity. Like, it sounds like your heart rate's up there. It is. You're getting your heart rate up there. You want it to be over 170. You want to be in that, like, they call it, I guess it's like one step below is vigorous, but it's kind of like max exertion that you're going, max heart rate levels that you're into. It's probably another word, but I don't want to mess with my phone as it keeps time for me here. But you got to be in that max, but you can do it. I'm doing these intervals for 5 minutes. And if you wanted to spread that out a bit, do that. Like, whatever high intensity you are capable of doing. And I understand that anybody who's listening is probably going to have different ability sets. I mean, I was a varsity athlete since high school, so I'm going to have a different set of physical goals than somebody who's been sedentary their entire life. But so then go for like a 15-second high intensity, where you sprint for like 10 seconds, 5 seconds, or just high intensity. Sprint, to say high intensity shouldn't indicate that it's an all-out sprint. It's just high enough intensity that it's unsustainable, that there's going to be at some point within this nearly a burnout for you. And you adjust and you get it to work for you in whatever level that you are at. And I think it's absolutely invaluable, because the way that I feel is so night and day. And I've known this in my life through exercise, but I really find particularly it's when I do this high intensity stuff, because it turns on those systems, I think, much more effectively than anything where your heart rate doesn't get up to those levels. Because it stands to reason, when your heart does get up to those levels, that's what's giving you the happy juice. It's that your body has gone into, I suppose, such a survival mode that it's kicking in all this, like this dopamine, the endorphins, all these things that are going to affect mood to allow you to exist at that level. In some sense, it's almost like tricking your body into being happy. But then if you believe you are, then there is no difference, because your body needs you to be able to survive whatever that exertion is, right? So it's giving you all the happy juice. And that's going to allow you to run from the saber-toothed tiger. It's going to allow you to, with an injury, carry on until you can get medical care, whatever it is. But it needs you to be happy, because if you give up, well, then you're dead. So you are necessarily made happy. It's kind of this fascinating thing where you are stressed. Like, that's a thing that I'm starting to feel before I go out and do this. I am stressed. But the funny thing is that the antidote to that is inducing another kind of stress, but one that makes you happy. Isn't that the trippiest thing in the world? That's so crazy. So there's my thoughts. Just like and this is another thing that's going on right now in my life, which I find, again, you got to talk about your personal experience, and I would never claim to know what would work for absolutely everyone. But I do think, as a general rule, it's fair to state that our population is more caffeine stimulated than they need to be. And I'm one of these people who's probably a bit of a guinea pig and works on this a bit more because I'm so reactive to any substance. I found that in my life. Like, it's funny too, for a big guy, you'd think that I'd be less reactionary to these things because there's so much volume that needs to get filled up here to have an effect. But I have a very strong reaction to like basically anything. And so coffee is something that I absolutely love for the reason that it sends me to infinity and beyond. But at the same time, it jacks me up so much and I enjoy it so much that like I can become caffeine addicted so easily. And just hit it and hit it and hit it. Like, there's a lot of people I notice, they're just like, I just have a cup a day, and that's good for me. Well, it's not goddamn good for me. Once I start to have it, because I so enjoy the high, I'll have 2 cups and then 3 cups and 4 cups. And then as you build up your, call it like resistance, I suppose, to it, then you're needing more and more and more and more. Well, I am anti-caffeine. I am decaffeinated. This is decaf davetrippin right now. But I really notice as well when I do these runs, particularly these. I can get this in the gym, but I got to go so hard at the gym. I don't usually think of the gym as like a high intensity interval. Although I suppose in a single set, given the way that you're exerting, it's like almost the ultimate high intensity, isn't it? Because you do 8 reps and you go to exhaustion. But I suppose because it's exhausting a different system, it's not your cardiovascular system that's exhausted, so you don't have that same feeling. You would have to be going from, you could do a circuit, maybe a circuit in the gym would have this similar effect for you. But my point is about the decaffeinated state and supercharging your attitude is that when I do this high interval training, I find the reason, well, I drink coffee, I suppose, for a number of reasons, but first and foremost, like anybody else, it's an energy boost, but I get this energy boost in equal doses, if not better, because it's a clearer state of mind when I do this kind of training as well. So if you want that kind of up and that high without any of the burnout, and if you're like me, where you get like easily like down the rabbit hole, or drinking too much of it, or it strings you out too quickly, like the even burn that this gives you. And as I say as well, when you have a lot of caffeine, you're like driven and you're purposeful, but I find that it's less clear what your purpose is. You kind of like go through a bunch of different things. It's like you have a high energy, but your focus suffers. That's the experience that I have with it anyways. So I also wanted to talk about, since we're in the realm of the channel here, we're in the realm of davetrippin, it's been really cool. There's a guy I've worked with a little bit. His name's Caden. If you look at my Patreon banner, which is like this collage, that was his idea. He was like, a lot of people do these cool collages, and then we'll do your tag davetrippin over top of that. And also he did the concept I did the photography for my banner channel, for like the banner on my channel. And then I said, I want something still like spray painted, something that like looks adult, but still kind of has a bit of an indie feel to it. And he came up with that. He does great work, and all out of the kindness of his heart. We're looking at doing merchandise in the airdrop style because let's be serious, the amount of views and size of my channel is not one where I can do a big order of different merchandise for the channel, and it wouldn't be anything but a massive loss. But with the modern advent of airdrop, where I basically use an intermediary company to create bespoke is made to order, but I don't know if that's quite the right word here. Basically, when you buy is when the item is created, and they have all the templates from you submitted that when somebody orders something, they take care of it. And it's great because they're going to take on the responsibility of shipping internationally. They have supply chains. I've been researching a few different companies, and there are clear better ones. This is something I could maybe advise people in the future where they were wondering about doing some sort of like cool, they want to do hoodies or shirts, and knowing how to do that well and not go with like a crap company. That it's so important, right? Because I do not want to go with a crap company where if you guys get something that the quality of it is such that within a week or two, the print fades, and that would be horrible because it's representative of you and the sort of, product experience, merchandise, whatever you want to call it, that you want to put in the hands of people. And you should care about that if you ever want people to really enjoy it, which I do. So what is exciting, and what I wanted to share about this conversation with Caden, was that we were talking about designs finally. So something I've maybe not discussed before, it's kind of just shown up in my banner, but thinking about like symbols of things as they relate to my channel, how I create, what I'm thinking of when I create. There's this idea of, I talk frequently of genuineness and the sort of topics that get covered with a mind on that. And it's like, I have this feeling like everything under the sun gets discussed here because it really is this like stab at showing a real slice of life here in Japan and just generally of my own. And so what you can count on is that I will be genuine like that. I will attempt to do that much as you would count on life, death, and taxes. And that's the symbol you can see on the banner right now. And I was thinking that would be such a cool triumvirate symbol if we could adapt that. We've already got the Lotus Dude, which Caden redesigned, and it looks so cool. But just recently I was sitting down with him and we were going over the new designs that he was working on, and they looked so cool. I gotta say it. Like, I like hyper minimal, I like kind of tactical, sleek, understated designs, and he's absolutely knocked it out of the park. So I'm thinking within the next month or so, once I have to research again whichever company that was that I'd found, which was far better if you wanted to do merchandise and do the airdrop style for people. Sit down with Caden a few more times to look at a few more different models, but then we'll be able to do that. And it'll be so cool. And I don't want to spoil anything yet. Maybe I can like eventually tease something on my Instagram. So if you don't follow me there, you should. That's davetrippin on, or davetrippin. You can look up there and there'll be updates as that continues to progress. So really, really exciting. I love sitting down with like-minded creatives and just seeing the sort of art that they produce. It's amazing. Which is a bizarre kind of non-segue into what I wanted to talk about recently. We're talking about the state of things, like literally what happened to me today. Well, let's talk about the broader state of Japan right now. And what I think is really fascinating to note, and it's one of these things that could very easily pass if you don't focus, if you're not reflective on the spirit experiences that are occurring around you as they unfold in the present moment. And that's what I would call a massive paradigm shift in Japan. And given the current state of things, which I cannot too directly comment on, but you obviously know what they are, my Sharona, a lot of the established systems in Japan that have only up until now kind of been snidely referred to as dated in a way that no one ever hoped would change, I think may now actually have a chance to progress. So you have a couple of different things in mind. One, which is like, oh, so Japanese, is the business mentality surrounding work culture. And that there is only this one mindset that you must be at the office, you must be there forever, you must work until late hours. There's an incredible pecking order to it, and there's an incredible pressure to do so. And it's one of my greatest criticisms of Japan, in that I'm all for hard work. Like I'm talking about it at the beginning of this. Like you work hard, you exercise hard, you feel mental and physical rewards from this. But to me, it's an egregious error in placing your effort when it is not done with efficiency. So what I mean to say there is that just because you spend long hours at an office doesn't mean that you're having an efficiency of work. It could mean, as I'm saying, just for appearances that you're there, and this is rampant in Japan, and I think it's unhealthy for the human soul. We don't need to talk about this in the context of purely Japanese mindset. Anyone who's just punching a clock for a really long time so they can appear like they're working hard when they aren't really, I think it's unhealthy for them. It's unhealthy for the business culture there. It's not a good idea. You could be doing so many million other things that would fulfill you more than creating a persona, an appearance of hard work that is, you're living a lie. Who feels good doing that? Probably some people that it would be interesting to have a conversation with if that actually makes you happy. But I think that as a result of so much work going on at home, and that has been done successfully, and there's like reports in Japan, like, okay, this is the interesting one that I saw. It was that suicide was down significantly by several hundred for this time of year, which... There was this guy who made the point that is a Japanese doctorate of something, I'm not sure, and I thought it was a legitimate point. He was talking about how in times of crisis that you will often have people not doing that, not taking their own lives, because it's like life kind of almost has a purpose in the sense that you need to survive it. That is the new purpose. But he said that he does not believe that that's totally it. He believes that it's the amount that people actually have been able to spend more time with their family, to not be run down by this work culture of expected showing of face for no particular other reason other than to show your face. And so that was one aspect that I thought notable. And what could be better than less people taking their lives and time spent with your family, and recognizing that an archaic work system where we have needless long hours and no life balance should go the way of the dodo is a wonderful thing. But then there's other elements in the society that seem to be having a paradigm shift as well, where there are things that I think are cool in a sort of like novel sense. And what I'm talking about there is the hanko or the inkan. It's the stamp that you'll get here. And to me, it would be cool if you were 10 years old and there was like a group, there was a club of people, and they were like, you can only come in our club and hang out if you have this sweet seal stamp. And I'd be like, oh, I want one of those stamps too. They're so cool. You get your kanji on them, or you get some katakana, and we do this like we're pretending like it's the 1600s, and we stamp things like it's an official seal. So that's cool in a club for 10-year-olds. But when that system, that club, is actually pervasive in the entire Japanese bureaucracy, enforced by the current modern Japanese government, that barely anything official can be done without this toy of the 17th and 16th century, is the most dated concept that's holding your country back in a million different ways. You should just be able to sign things. If you want to have an inkan, it's cool. You can have your old family seal, and that's very official and sweet. But to have it so disruptive and so causing so many problems for people now, it's ridiculous. Like a lot of it to do with, say, you're doing something like banking. Actually, abroad in Japan spoke about this recently, Chris, where he had an experience at the bank and he didn't have his inkan, didn't have his hanko, and like they all freaked out. And my buddy Drew had the exact same experience. And these are people will often have their driver's license, a Visa or MasterCard with them, tons of photo ID, maybe even a passport, and this stupid little stamp that's, as I say, novel and cool from a bygone era, disrupting them being able to do modern banking where everything is handled digitally except for this little stamp. It's so stupid. And as I've heard, there are rumblings to get rid of this stamp, perhaps because there was such a rush to deal with medical information that was disrupted by, it was like there was so many, there's usually problems because of this thing anyways, but because of my Sharona, this compounded those problems, and people finally had to take a very serious look at, you know what, maybe this dated piece of crap ought to go to the way of the dodo. So that was another thing. And then the final one, which has been a joke that people make in Japan regarding the fax machine, that for the exact same medical reasons has come under fire, that it was disrupting and creating friction in the flow of information. Surprise, it's a fax machine in 2020 that is predominantly used in Japan, and it was Japanese nationals that were complaining about the inefficiencies that it was creating in the bureaucratic system, where everything right now needs to be done so efficiently when there's literally an infinite amount of work and testing to be done, and things that are extraneous, things that are superfluous, are such an irritant at this point that it's forcing people to consider adapting these very, very dated ideas. And I think a few things that could be better. That's really, really cool. So with great respect for the amount of suffering that's been caused, I do believe that there are certain elements I know definitely in Japanese society, but I would imagine in many places as well. It's when you have something that assaults a system, a way of doing things, the benefit of that is, of course, that it reveals weaknesses in it. Just like with anything, really. I mean, if you want another example of it, you have companies that particularly ask computer savvy individuals to hack their website or their program or whatever as a sort of bomb proofing to make them more resilient. And this has really exposed a number of weaknesses in many cultural systems. And as a result of that, I think that there could be major changes that really benefit the world on the whole, at a great cost, of course. That should be noted. And I won't even comment on whether it's like, is it worth the cost? That becomes a kind of a zero-sum game. I don't think you can discuss it in that way. You just simply have to separate these objectively and say that one should be given all its due respect, but we cannot ignore these other things that are occurring as a result. So I'm kind of curious now, moving beyond that. So I've said you've got the Hanko, that's changing. You've got work-life balance that is being addressed. You've got the fax machines in Japan. And then these are the broad perspective things that are easy for me to find when you look at any kind of news article. But who knows whatever else might change? I mean, it's so interesting, the work-life balance, because there's so many people that I've spoken to more and more and more that have been happier working at home. It's worked well for the businesses. You really do wonder if that, I don't think it could go back, because it's one of these things where both parties have recognized that it's in their interest that it wouldn't. So that's a little cool thing going on right now that we should, if our heads are out of the sand and we're looking around, we would notice this. All right, you know the drill. It's at this point we've discussed some different topics here. We're going to move on to the emails now, and we're going to dig in. We got a bunch of good emails. And if you want your email answered on the podcast, get a hold of me at davetrippin@gmail.com. I'm seeing those coming in. I really appreciate it. And like I was saying in the last one, if you put where you're from, particularly, is really, really cool for me. I think I had somebody recently saying, hey, you got to come and hang out in Africa. And that's pretty fucking sweet. I got to say, really cool to have that international influence. All right, so now let's dive into those emails. First email comes in from Adam Burns. Great work with the podcast and channel. Really enjoy the content. Thank you very much, Adam. Appreciate it. I started learning Japanese with one of those listen and repeat CDs, which I'd listen to anytime I was in the car. It was good for basic greetings, but I later lost it when I got my new car. I've been looking for something like Rosetta Stone, which was decent when I was in the early stages of learning Greek. But I've heard mostly negative reviews about the Japanese course. My question would be if you have any tips on where to go online to start learning the language with the end goal of becoming fluent. So what you want to look for Okay, so there's two things that you can do. Um, there's several actually, but I got the book right here, right here. This one that I would recommend for anybody who's just starting out. So it's called Mina no Nihongo, and this is your basic grammatical book that you can grab. And there's number 1 and there's number 2. So you can start with number 1, and of course you need that because you need a grammatical footing. You need to understand what is this vocabulary that you're learning that you can then put into context, of course. Now, what I would add to that is this amazing, incredible thing called Anki. So Anki, I actually finally learned Anki suru means to memorize. So, aha, I had that eureka moment. That it's basically, it's an app. It's an app that you can get for your computer and you would have it on your phone. And what this app is for is creating virtual flashcard decks. Now, you can make your own. It's not complicated to do so, but a lot of people have put good effort into making these decks already, and they are available online for you free of charge, just like the app is free of charge. And the rate, it's like, I can't remember the system, how this type of learning is described, but it's basically the algorithm learns your recall. And there's like 3 different kinds of progress that you make with a card. So there's like initial, pre-long term, and long term. I'm making those up, but it captures the idea well enough. And when you get a card right, it immediately now knows, given like how many ever times that you've gotten that card right, when it should show you that card again. And it is constantly adjusting not only to the amount that you've got it right, but to the cards that are very, very difficult for you. And it is like magic if you, with consistency, this is another thing with language, consistency is king. If you are consistently practicing with Anki, you will build your vocabulary like a boss. Now, if you're concerned about kanji, I've kind of like gone past the point of no return at this point, but it's highly recommended that you would use this book called Remembering the Kanji. So what this employs for a learning method, why it works, is that when you try to learn an abstract concept, that's really, really difficult. And it usually takes repetition, 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 because there's nothing, when it's so abstract to you personally, there's nothing that grounds that into your memory. Now, when you compare this to something that is called imaginative memory, it's something entirely different, and our recall for imaginative memory is incredible compared to conceptual. So this idea is that, okay, here's the example. I like did this in school. You could do this with anyone. If you simply give people a list of 6 different words, for example, like hot, cold, spicy, extra spicy. I don't know, you got them those words. If you then asked, say it's a non-native learner and they're learning those words, or if they are a native of the language, if you say, what were those 6 words that I just said? And you gave them 3 minutes to recall or like try and remember, they would get a few. But then if you compared this to, if you took those words and you put them into a story. So you said, on one icy day, we had a hot drink, and then I had a spicy banana, and then I had an extra spicy pickle. The recall on those words would be significant. It would be extreme compared to the other. And it's because in the context of a story, we connect it to an imaginative memory, and our recall is incredible. So what remembering the kanji does, and this is specifically for reading kanji, is that when you learn them, you learn to create a memorative, I get kind of making up words here, a memorative story. So when you look at something, you don't think of the reading, you think of a story that reminds you of the reading. And this guy who made it, he's had incredible success. There's a reason that the book has done so well. I know a number of top level speakers of Japanese who have used that to really hone their reading ability with kanji, and they've done incredibly well. So that's something that I would highly recommend if you're serious about the reading aspect of it. Mina no Nihongo is really good for getting your feet wet with the grammatical side of things. And then Anki is excellent for building your vocabulary with these virtual flashcard decks. These are my thoughts regarding the language. Okay, cool. So that's, we're out of the gate strong here. All right, next one coming up. This is Todd. Hope you're well. Love the podcast. Right on. I wanted to ask your thoughts on studying in Japan and any advice on how to make the most of it. I'm from Australia. Thank you for mentioning where you're from. I appreciate that. And we'll be moving to Japan to study a master's degree. Slow clap. Well done. I intended to start a few weeks ago, but it has been delayed for now. A lot of comments on Reddit claim a Japanese degree is not useful outside of Japan. I was a little surprised to read this, as I would have thought, if anything, employers would be interested in someone who had studied overseas. Yeah, more and more these days. Oh, hold on, I got to get through this. I suppose it's largely what you make of it. Also, more broadly, do you have any idea on how to tell good stories? I find that even when you were talking about ordinary events, it's engaging. Thanks for your time. I guess I'll answer in reverse. I'd be enthusiastic on the topic. It's that kind of idea that if you really care about the thing that you're discussing, you could sell ice to Eskimos, you know? So you can't fake interest, but if you're really interested, that usually creates, it's infectious. People feel, maybe that's a bad word to use these days. People get caught up in energy. But as to your question there, like, again, answering in reverse order, people today care, they care about I say people, companies more accurately, I would say, they care about what you can do. So, that's why you've seen the rise of online education. If Japanese degrees are not so useful, then I would imagine that anything online is incredibly useless, and that is not the case. I know a number of people who've done distance education, who've done online educations, and they're getting hired into fantastic jobs. So if you go looking for trouble, I think you're going to find it. And it's that kind of, it's easy, and I've talked about this before in the podcast, where if you look up one negative thing, like say on YouTube, for example, you're going to then be bombarded by a million negative things because you've searched that out, and then although there may only be 2,000 people who share that opinion, because you've directed your attention at that, now you're seeing all of those 2,000 opinions all at once, and it seems to be the overwhelming accepted viewpoint. But if you then shifted, perhaps you went and looked and said, is this awesome? Then maybe you'd find something else. Also, what I've discussed recently, culturally, a critic is more respected if he gives praise if he criticizes rather than praises. And so our culture has gone into a kind of default mode, I think, whether consciously or subconsciously, to identify that the more critical we are, then we must be more intelligent, or at the very least, will garner far more respect from people if we are critical. And so saw Kevin Hart talking about this recently, where it's like, to be negative is what's cool. And there's a number of different sources that corroborate this. Like that quote that I'm talking about is from Steven Pinker's book, Enlightenment Now, where he talks about this kind of like viewpoint that's arisen in the world of negativity, and where you can objectively debunk so much of this negativity looking at cold, hard scientific numbers. If you look at child death, if you look at literacy, if you look at it's not women's suffrage, obviously women are voting, but like the progress of civil rights, of women's rights. There's a lot of ways that we're doing better than we ever have been in any other time in history. Believe me, if you wanted to, if you asked like what time would I rather live in, believe me, for most times, for most answers, it would be now. And if the question was what time would you rather live in history for dental care, it would definitely be now. And a lot of people Do you know that used to be like, that's how people died, mostly. Their teeth. What a rough way to go. So let's see, but now back to the very beginning. Thoughts on studying in Japan. I think that it is fantastic. I think there's a lot to be said in life, unless you are one of these people who knew from when you were 5 years old exactly what you wanted to do. I think by giving yourself new inputs, by new experiences, that you create the opportunity for cognitive leaps where, because you're in different environments, there's so many more interconnections and ideas that you have because you're forced to have them. When you live in a totally different environment, you have to build this whole new mental map of where it is that you live. When you're taking on new challenges, you have to approach these challenges because they have answers that you've never seen before. So by virtue of the fact that life is, plainly put, more difficult when you study in another country, you become your brain's smarter. I didn't know. Let's cut to the chase. I think when you do that, when you challenge yourself cognitively like this, you give yourself, as I say, leaps in terms of what it is that you could see for a potential future for yourself. You're able to connect the dots better. You're able to see opportunities that you wouldn't see, and the reason for that is that you are able to see more possibilities because you have been exposed to more possibilities. There's nothing more routine than growing up in a small town, never ever leaving it, and you become the ultimate authority on life in that little microcosm, and you don't grow. That is a broad stroke on small towns. And it's 100% accurate. Oh, take it or leave it. Take that with a grain of salt. But my point still stands, and I would argue that. Okay, so that was a great one. Nice, good one from Todd there. Thank you very much. Okay, next one. This is Guzman Gonzalez from Uruguay. Uruguay. Thank you for writing where you're from. Love your work. Well, I like your Japan stuff. I was in Osaka for 2 months in a homestay. Very cool. I appreciate your reflections much more. Right on. Not because the tours are bad. I still enjoy them. But your way of speaking is just superb. Nice. Thanks. All right. Some time ago, I was feeling really good for the time span of like 2 months. I would have had good days and great days. And so I thought of studying, playing guitar, learning more Japanese. N2, well done, my friend. Had some good times with good friends and bads. Good friends, good times and bad. But I felt something off inside me. I wasn't as happy as I thought I would be because I really am doing the things I like. So you thought perhaps you should be happier. I think I was illuminated by some artificial light that made me feel artificial happiness. Oh, okay, so it wasn't actually making you happy. Having noticed, I became obsessed with real things, real relationships, real opinions, my own. I'd find my real likes and dislikes. For example, I would keep the conversation with someone I do not like or attracted to physically. That was a bit rough sentence. Or some bad friends I felt amazing to do. Ultimately, I think I got my mind clear and much more focused, with my principles more active, but became lonely. Became more lonely. I just feel either way, the story ends with not much of a conclusion. You know, I kind of had that feeling as we were going through. But I hope I can find one that feels good soon. Being in Japan, I know some of this artificial light and happiness can shine on you so easily. Have these fake relationships, vague conversations affected you? Oh, okay, then we get to something there that's interesting. I think we have, if we're not utterly deluding ourselves, a pretty good radar to the things that are genuine in our lives and are not. And I would see there, in my own experience, that maybe they give us like a really temporary gratification because there must be some reason that we're doing them. Because people are doing things for a reason. We're not one-dimensional villains in our own stories. We're doing them for a reason. And I think perhaps And it makes sense that even if it's a fake relationship, well, at least it's a relationship. That there'll be things in our lives that even though they're fake, perhaps there's a hole enough and we're not getting the real experience of things that we're willing to take on these fake relationships to try and fill that gap. But the problem with this is that we know that they're not real, and so it has a double cost. Not only is it not real, but we are subconsciously aware of that. And I think that there is some sort of self-resentment that grows, knowing that you shouldn't be taking satisfaction from something that isn't real. And so it sucks. You're not having a real relationship or friendship. And then not only that, you're aware that you're only participating in that for the cheap thrills, and that gets you down on yourself. That sort of negative opinion towards yourself, that self-loathing, I think that can be pretty subtle though. So it's hard to tell. And obviously, whatever immediate gratification we're getting from it is strong, because these are not things that are resolved instantaneously. They actually usually take some kind of personal reflection, stopping for a moment, bottoming out. Say that person treats you like shit. Say you're in a relationship and they walk all over you and they don't appreciate any value that you have. Maybe they're the classic idea of a bad influence on you. Maybe you find yourself behaving in a way or acting towards others in a way that you never would have if not for that relationship. So there's a million ways that we discover it, but it's not always clear. And it does, I think, take a little bit of effort to get out of it, because we're taking something from it. Otherwise, we would not be in them at all. It wasn't that long of an email. Sorry for the long email. If you end up talking through, for your sake, I hope you keep being you, and I will always listen. The grinding doesn't stop. It doesn't, but I don't consider it a grind. This is what I love to do. I hope you're well, Guzman. Thank you very much for your email. That was really cool. Interesting reflection on real and fake relationships there. Okay, here we go. So we're into the next one here. Cool name, Yuri Rains. Hi, Dave. It's nice to be able to write you. I've been viewing your videos for a while now. Love the content. Unfiltered, uncondescending, some real thought and care. That's what we go for here, Yuri. Thank you very much. I'm Israeli born. That's so cool. Okay. And soon to be a master's degree in English education. I'm finding that my audience is far better educated than I am. That's cool. All right. No problem. I'm not self-conscious about that. Okay. So I have a master's degree in education, English teaching, with 1 year actual experience teaching in a Montessori kindergarten. That's cool. When I've had conversations about Montessori, that particular kind of education, quite impressive, pretty cool way, like really in tune with the idea of tailoring learning, I believe, individually, which is something that I think all technology moves towards. That's a different conversation, but tailoring medicinal technology, like the way David Sinclair talks about how medicine, as we move into the future, I forgot this until I heard him discuss it again, will be increasingly tailored to you specifically. And I think that, of course, education should be this way. And our simplest kind of primordial example of this, when education is working well, is smaller class sizes. Because when you have a smaller class size, you can deal with the individual needs and strengths of the people who are in it. And so that's a great way to go about education. I was awarded the MEC scholarship. Well, look at you. Look at this, Yuri. And spent 2 of the best years studying and living in Kyoto. That's great. I can truly relate to many of the things you say, especially those for personal growth. Okay, so let's go a little further. Since then, I've basically mock fighting against fictional native speaker teachers. I am blessed with a clear, though non-native accent, and have a native control of speech, clearly from this email, reading and comprehension and culture, having lived a few years in America and having friends with whom I communicate in English. I'm a bit lacking for the moment when it comes to spelling, sometimes miss a double letter. How dare you? How dare you? Horrible, Yuri. It's It's all good. Once I'm done with my obligations in Israel, I aim to find employment in Japan. That should be no problem. I guess my question here, how do I start to look for a teaching position that will hire non-native? Because you have like a master's degree, and you have teaching experience, Yuri, I don't think that's going to be a problem. The one for you is going to be jalt.org, JALT.org. When you're at that level, like master's education, and you can be looking at positions in universities, international schools, private schools. You'll have clear sailing, no problem whatsoever. You seem to be quite knowledgeable with that sort of deal. With non-natives, I already know I can find work. You got the JLPT N3, that's great. Yeah, really good stuff. I am 34 years old, so I don't think a work holiday visa would apply. No. I think that answers your question for you there, Yuri. Like I say, jalt.org, you'll get in there, and you'll do well, man. Bon voyage. You're going to have a great time. These people with their real educations, whatever. Okay. Nope, that's not a question. Okay, let's see. Hi, Dave. This is Gabriel. I'm 10 years younger than you. What would you say to your 25-year-old self, or what advice would you give to someone my age? Oh, okay. That's a good question and concise. Brevity is the soul of wit, as they say. I would say it's hard to know, but if you have a passion, if you have something that you really enjoy doing, utterly embrace that thing and develop it the moment you realize it. And that will have one of two effects. It means that you will reach mastery of it, and with mastery comes deep, profound satisfaction. It will individualize you, because anybody who is able to master something becomes more unique. It will teach you better appreciation of this world that we occupy, because mastery teaches you to see far more deeply into the state of things, the state of the world, no matter what it is that you do, because you understand the interconnection of all the elements that need to work together for you to create something incredible, be that a piece of art, a piece of music, a great book, an incredible feat of engineering. It doesn't matter. Secondly, after that, it would be to say that in that pursuit of what you are so passionate about, actually there's three, it's going to potentially, because some people say, well, that just led to this other thing. Well, that's great. One passion can lead to another, and the same benefits of the former still apply if you pursue a latter, which is fantastic. And thirdly, you always come in contact with people when you do that who appreciate and can share that experience with you. And just as your experience with that medium will deepen, so will your relationship with the people that also take part in it. There's just a way, like anybody knows, with any hobby that they have, or passion, or, I think sometimes hobby's a dirty word, because I don't think any of this is a hobby. This is my ikigai, it's my calling. That you can, that person, having seen what you've seen, having known what you've known, gets to share with you that experience. And that's like, that could be craft beers, that could be sports, that could be anything. But we all know this feeling, and it's absolutely invaluable. Did that in under like 2 minutes. I think that's pretty good. There's a sound bite. Okay, we're gonna go for one or two more. That was cool. That was a good one. And we've almost caught up. Okay, yeah, this will probably be the last. All right. Alucard, excellent. Okay, long-time viewer, first time actually contacting you. Greetings from Scotland. Well, how sweet is that? It's from Scotland. I actually have, my roots are Norwegian and Scottish, so this is really cool. Getting a touchstone here. Oh, nice to hear you have ancestors here. He knows. And that's a wicked name. That's the vampire name from Castlevania. Lately, I've been having a bit of an inner conflict with regards to Japan, so I'll keep it short. I'm 25 at present and have been with my partner for the past 2 years since moving from teaching English in China. Well, this experience was great and I really did enjoy teaching. My issue lay with the fact that I didn't want to make a future in China, so it just seemed like a working holiday. Working, that came out interesting. A twerking holiday. I've always dreamed of living in Japan, but at the time I was given the opportunity through a friend to teach in China to test the water, so to speak. Anyways, after living in China, I moved to Japan for a few months with the money I had saved and my mindset settled. I know in my heart that this is the place for me. I have all the correct certifications, so really just waiting to hit that big green button. Now here's my issue. My partner, who I genuinely love with all my heart, has lots of commitments back here in Scotland. Oh boy, oh Jesus. And after some light conversation, it's pretty clear she would not be coming with me. That was light? That conversation was light? I don't feel like that would be a light conversation. So it's pretty clear. I've only dipped my toes in the waters with regards to the idea of me moving, and it honestly breaks my heart, but I don't want to live with the regret of not going, which would most likely make me resent her. I feel you're finding the answers to the questions you were asking as you wrote this to me. It appears we are on different wavelengths, and I'm struggling with the concept of actually sitting down to tell her. I honestly feel like a selfish asshole. You are selfish, but I don't think that makes you an asshole. Sometimes you realize videos that genuinely make me feel like you can read my mind. Perhaps I can. So I was hoping you could provide some insight. I know you had a similar situation before leaving Canada. I did have that, although I guess before I entered the relationship, I kind of knew that prior. So I was comfortable with it. And I've talked about my Spanish flower in the past. Ultimately, the decision is mine and mine alone, but writing this helps get the idea out. Absolutely. Oh, nice. I didn't say the name. Alucard is just like the handle. It's not the name. So we'll leave that out. Whew. Okay. So I got to do this pretty concisely. What I would say to this man is that to remember impermanence. And I'm not saying that relationships aren't worth having and that they aren't worth investing into and that they aren't worth dedicating yourself to. But I do feel like we know when is the time to do that. And I think there are appropriate moments in our life when, kind of like I said earlier in the podcast about how we are good at sniffing out bullshit and disingenuous behavior. We are good at knowing deep down whether something is actually good for us or if we're clinging to something only because it's familiar and comfortable. And so in this situation, I would say it's clear you want to come to Japan. You would regret it if you did it, and you would resent her if you stayed. And then that is a service to no one. There exists the potential that if you do this, of course, naturally it'll be more difficult, but because you were honest, straightforward, and went through it like a man, then you can salvage the relationship. And we only think of ourselves as together with people. This is another clouding element, like, oh, I'm only with them if I'm with them intimately. But I deeply, deeply love and respect that girl that I had to leave behind. And I think what matters more is the relationship itself. And so you might think of this as leaving the relationship, but this is evolving the relationship. And no, it's not an intimate relationship anymore. Although, here's a little tangent I could go on. You know that the Greeks had like several different words for love, right? You had like eros, you had like, I don't know the other ones. Why do I only know the one for erotic love? We all know why. There are so many different ways to love people, and we get this idea that if I'm not in that classically Western intimate relationship, then it's all off. But you can still have a relationship with that person, and it is always better to go about that relationship in a way that means it will always be loving, maybe not intimately, but fundamentally loving. And so you can still go on with this. Do away with what is done. Let the past die. And let it evolve into what it needs to be. And if you do it right and you do it genuinely, you have this clarity of mind that if she can see that you're not trying to be hurtful, that you're following what feels honest and genuine to you, and you do not intend to hurt her, well, if she is mature enough, she will understand that, difficult as it is. Nobody owns anybody. All our time with each other is borrowed time, all running through the hourglass to run out soon. And if it is difficult for her, well, and she's not mature enough to handle it, then that's how it's got to be, and you got to move on from that. But then there's a third scenario where people will actually go through these kind of experiences, be really, really bitter, but then because you held your head high, you stood by your morals, you stood by your principles, in time, they come to respect that decision because it hurts. That's mostly what it is to begin with. It sucks. What's happening is really painful, and they don't have a way to reconcile that pain in a way other than to be hurtful back at you. They're basically just speaking pain at that point. But given time, the neocortex can do its work, and those of us who are not overwhelmed by bitterness will appreciate if that person was genuine. But it is a painful portal to pass through. I'm not saying that any of that is going to be easy for you. There you are, guys. The clock has run out. I actually had to cut this last snippet in because my camera only records for 30-minute intervals, and it cut me off there. But this is really cool. I really enjoyed this session's discussion. You guys had some great emails. Send me a bunch of those. Please do like the video, please do subscribe, and please do hit that bell notification if you want to be let known as soon as a video goes live on the channel. And lastly, please do consider supporting me on Patreon because that is incredibly appreciated. Thank you so much for doing so, anyone who does. But yeah, the clock has run out, and I'll catch you in the next one.